Councilor Bailao about the issues within the city. I guess I'll start out with the first question. How can we support Toronto's post-secondary students?
Well, I think as a city, you need to make sure that you have the supports in terms of recreational services, in terms of our libraries, that we have good, accessible public spaces for them, being in terms of parks, where we can have activities, being in terms of the recreational services and having affordable programs, being in the libraries, making sure that our libraries are well equipped. So from the latest technology, which we're starting to have in our libraries, to e-books, to videos, even music you can find now in the libraries, I think that's really important, to even going all the way to housing, making sure that students can go home to a good, stable house is important. So when you're talking about supporting secondary schools as a city, there's different areas in different departments that need to work towards youth and need to work towards secondary students.
How do you think the universities and colleges could be more involved with preparing secondary students for their education?
Well, I think that a lot of universities are now reaching out into some high schools and having programs even when you're in grade 12 and 13 that you already start going into university. I think those are great programs. I remember when I was in high school, there were some of those programs that you could do a university course while still in my time they were still grade 13. So you were in grade 13 and you would actually get a credit for university and a credit for high school. I think that's great. It prepares you, it gives you an opportunity to look into what university life is and the pace of university. So I think initiatives like that are great. The more you have, the more collaboration you have between secondary schools and universities, the better.
There's a big issue in our city with overcrowded shelters. How do you think public housing could play into reducing that crowding?
So the reason why there's such a huge number of overcrowded shelters, it's actually because we don't have adequate housing. So people are staying in shelters a long time because it's very hard for them to find housing. So the solution for our shelters is actually to find appropriate transitional housing and appropriate long-term affordable housing. That's the way we're going to solve our shelter, so that is people don't stay 3 months, 6 months in a shelter. What they need is to have good, affordable, long-term housing instead of having that shelter and using the shelter, which is supposed to be something temporary, very, very short term, and that needs to be used that way, not as a transitional housing. And we have a large number of people that unfortunately need to use it as transitional housing.
There's been a recent ombudsman report, and there's been a lot of criticism of Toronto community housing. How do you think we can better manage our Toronto community housing corp?
So Toronto Community Housing has had issues since day one, since it began when the MyCare downloaded everything into the city. So you had 3 housing providers that had to come together into one to become the second largest landlord in North America, the largest one in Canada, with 164,000 tenants. It's a huge corporation that has a lot of issues. So not only it has issues because it is large, it has issues because we have over 2,000 buildings that came to us, the majority of them without any money for repairs, and the majority of them were built in the 50s and 60s, and now it's getting to that time that they need repairs. They need structural repairs. And there is no money. They were downloaded to us. Here you go, have all these buildings, but there's no money to keep them up, to fix them, to renovate them, and so on. So it's all coming from the tax base, and that's another pressure. And then there's the pressure of having a big corporation with a lot of issues that there was in terms of how they were doing procurement. Now, there was issues on how they were evicting seniors. There was issues with the latest one was the hiring and firing practices. So I think that a lot has been improved. We recently had an audit report from the auditor. The auditor has done 5 audits since 2011, and he came out with a report just last month that was extremely positive on the new procurement policies, on the new ways that TCHC is doing its audit. We finally have internal auditor that responds directly to the board of directors. So these are very good steps forward, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. And I continue to question if the organization is just not too big, because inside Toronto Community Housing, you have such a diverse set of housing that you need to provide, right? You have people that all their need is help with their rent, and then you have everything from people that need supportive housing to seniors housing to it's a complex organization, and I think that we seriously need to look at the governance of Toronto Community Housing.
Do you think Toronto Community Housing would be better off if it was like split up into different corporations?
I think that we need to look at the best way to serve it. Is it? I don't know if it's. I'm not sure if it's different corporations or if it's different segments clearly done by seniors, by transitional housing. I think that we need to be open-minded to explore what the way that we govern Toronto Community Housing.
You're on the board. What do you think could be done, or what proposals are currently on the board that will help manage this governance issues?
So I've joined the board about a year and bit in February of 2013, and my main concern has been to make sure that the recommendations of the Put People First report were implemented, because a few years, and back in 2012, there was a proposal to sell off all the scattered homes to pay for the repair backlogs. Well, for me, that wasn't a solution. You know, you're going to sell 900 homes, you're going to get $200 million. The backlog is $800 million. So what are you going to do next? There's no plan for what to do next. And for me, you know, you don't start selling off the assets to start solving a problem without having a plan of what you're going to do to really solve the problem as a whole. And so we had a special task force that I chaired, and we came with a set of recommendations that put us on the path to solve this issue without selling the 900 homes and putting all these people, you know, in different neighborhoods and different communities. So I think that right now the board, this board is doing two very important things. One is stabilizing the organization since the CEO left just a couple of months ago. The second one is to tackle really the backlog and the new developments that it has. We have a lot of developments going on. We have the Regent Park still going on. We started Alexander Park. We've started Lawrence Heights. We have almost $1 billion of redevelopment in the next 10 years. It's a lot of work that needs to happen. And also this report that came on the hiring and firing practices. It's important. We need to pay close attention to it. We've recently hired a commissioner of housing equity. We're the first housing social provider that has in North America that has a commissioner of housing equity. So we're very proud of that. We think that's the way to go. We need to give tenants a voice and make sure that they're being treated fairly and equitable. So I think that they're in the right path, and I think that the next term of council will have big decisions to do, and the next board will have big decisions to do. But I think this, because the board as it exists knows that a term is coming to an end as well, they want to make sure that they stabilize the organization and they move the organization forward, and they put a good management team together.
What do you think could have been better how do you think Toronto could have better dealt with the Toronto storm, and even we're coming up on summer and the flood happened, do you think we'd be prepared for like another flood?
Well, with the Toronto storm, there's definitely one thing that was clear that it could have been done better, and that's the upkeeping of our trees and our tree canopy. One issue was that because there were funds that were cut on tree pruning, we had a lot of wires that came down because trees came down. And of course, you know, when you get hit by such a strong storm, you're always going to have issues. But I think that we could have prevented the number of issues if we had done a better job in tree pruning. I think that we need to be very conscious on environmental issues in this city, because this is all the result of, you know, climate warming and everything else, right? It's a result of our day-to-day actions that accumulate to something that is not as normal, these storms and so on. So I think we need to do better at that. And one thing that is very important is communication. And I think we need to have a protocol of communicating with residents that needs to be better. You know, because yes, we had the TV and press conference and everything, but people didn't have hydro. So how are they really listening to this? Like making sure that we're out there. Is it flyers? Is it not? Making sure that we're out there communicating with residents. It's really important. I think we need to do better at that. And we had a series of conversations with residents. The last one was just a couple of weeks ago. We're listening from residents as well on how to prepare and how to act better. So we don't know it all inside this building, so that's why it's so important to debrief after these events, large-scale events, to make sure that we do better. There's always space for improvement. I think people worked really, really hard, taking consideration there was, you know, Christmas holidays, and we had people working crazy amount of hours, being away from their families. So we need to thank them, but we know there's, in everything, I believe, there's always space for improvement to do better. So I think I appreciate that now we're going back and debriefing to make sure that we improve on certain things that could be done a little bit better.
Going into sustainability and changing our everyday lives and how we do things, what is being done on City Council to support community programs that promote sustainability?
What do you mean?
Specifically, like in your ward.
That.
Like reaching out to, say, like a community garden or bike share program or something like that.
In my area, there's quite a bit. We have quite a bit of community gardens. We have great nonprofit organizations. So from everything from Food Share to the Stop to a lot of breakfast programs in schools and you know, all these programs that try to influence more greening of our space. So from planting trees, we have organizations that actually have volunteers going door to door in different languages. One of them is called Green Year, that promotes people to plant trees and actually does it for them and teaches for them. And we, the city, do the same thing in the front yard, but they actually do it as well in the private property of the person.
Just going back to bike lanes, and do you think there's a way that we could help encourage bike safety and make it and make cyclists, I guess, more aware of pedestrians and cars, so that way?
I think that there's two things that need to happen. One is there's a lot of education. You're absolutely right, and I think we all have a role. The city has a big role to play, and we as councillors need to play that role as well. And then the other thing is that we need to stop this dialogue, this conversation that it's like, oh, you're either pro cars or you're an advocate for cycling. There's not that. You need to understand that you need everything. The city is growing at a very fast pace. You have people that cycle, you have people that walk, you have people that take DTC, and you have people that take cars. And you have to address everything. In order to tackle congestion in the city properly, in order to have a city that works, you need to make it easier and safe for all these four. And they complement each other. And you need to make sure that they complement each other. You need to make sure that you have a good network of transit. You need to make sure at the same time you need to have a good network of cycling. You need to make sure that that everybody looks out for pedestrians. That pedestrian safety is at heart of everything. So I would get really upset when people say, oh, you know, that person is pro bike or that person is just pro car. You know what? We need to end this. It's not that. Cities need to look at what we call complete streets, and we need to. And sometimes it's hard to have coming into our neighborhoods, and you need to be creative, and you need to be a little bit patient. And says, you know what? Let's let one group is not more important than the other. It's how we work out in the neighborhood and the aspects of the neighborhood.
In working out those aspects, I guess part of that would also be educating drivers and
absolutely
whatnot. So how do we educate drivers about respecting the zone of, I guess, cyclist space?
Well, I think that the sharrows, the bike lanes enforce it visibly, but I think that through campaigns, through this month is Bike Month, making sure that there's lots of programs and information, and you know, governments do a lot of advertisement as well, and we need to make sure that there's advertising in there. I was very happy to see the provincial government also putting money into cycling infrastructure and saying that they're going to put money into education as well. So that's really important, that this education happens not only through the mainstream media, but also through the organizations like Cycle Toronto, that we educate, and even organizations such as CAW. They're always advocating for the cars and drivers. We need to make sure that we give them the mandate and the duty of also educating their members and their drivers to make sure that they need to educate about living together and pay attention to pedestrians and cyclists and everything.
Councilor, sorry, how do you say your name?
Anna Bailao.
Anna Bailao, thank you so much for your time. Sorry
No
about
problem.
the not being able to pronounce
No
your
problem.
name.
Happens all the time.
Okay.